On a flight across the Atlantic, this pilot comes across the intercom and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be your pilot for this flight. The flight is going well. Nevertheless, I have to tell you about a minor inconvenience that has occurred. The passengers on the right side can see out their windows. The closest engine is slightly vibrating. Don't worry, the plane is equipped with 4 engines and we're flying smoothly at an acceptable altitude and speed. But while you're looking out the window, you'll notice the other engine glowing. Actually, it's burning. Don't let that worry you either. The plane is designed to fly with just 2 engines if necessary, and we're maintaining an acceptable speed and altitude. But as long as we're looking out the window, those of you on the left side of the plane shouldn't worry if you notice one of the engines is completely missing. We lost it about 10 minutes ago. But we're amazed the plane is still doing so well without it. We're still maintaining an acceptable speed and altitude. However, I will draw your attention to a more serious matter. Along the center aisle, all the way down the plane, is a crack that has appeared. Some of you, I suppose, are able to look through the crack and see the waves in the Atlantic Ocean. And some of you, in fact, if you have good eyesight, you may be able to spot a small lifeboat down on the plane that was thrown from the plane recently. Ladies and gentlemen, you will be happy to know that your captain is keeping an eye on the plane and the progress of the plane from the lifeboat below. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be too happy about that. Sometimes we feel like the passengers on this plane, right? Everywhere you look, things are falling apart, and you feel as though everything is going to crash and burn into a big disastrous mess, right? School's not going as many of you have planned or expected it or even wanted it to go, with starting out with the first 9 weeks being online learning and remote learning. Friendships or dating relationships could be on the rocks, who knows? Family situations are not always easy. Emotions and mental health can be strained at times. Sometimes life has a way of tearing us apart. It's in those moments that we need to be reassured that God is still in control. He has not fallen off his throne. He has not forgotten about you. He has not abandoned you. He still loves you, and he still has a plan for your life. God is a restorer, and when things are falling apart, God can put our lives back together again. So here are a couple of things that we need to remember when things around us are all falling apart. First is, when things are falling apart, we need to remember that God restores. So in ancient times, predators like lions and wolves would often attack the sheep, and all that was usually left of them were pieces. I know it's gross, sorry. These pieces would be gathered up by the shepherd that was watching over them, and they would take those pieces to the sheep owner as account for the loss. Now in Amos, it's a book in the Bible, in the Old Testament, Amos, God depicts himself as the shepherd who recovers the leg bones. So Israel would be devastated, but not beyond recovery. God would start with the parts, the pieces, the remains, and Israel would be restored to blessing and favor once again. God promised this to Israel in Amos 9:11. Maybe there are some lions in your life that have attacked you and torn everything apart. Maybe your heart has been shattered into 1,000 pieces by assaults, whether physical or mental or verbal assaults on you. Maybe all you're left with today is pieces. Pieces of who you used to be. Pieces of your dreams that you used to have. Pieces of what you knew to be true in your life. Pieces of your family. But take heart, because God is a restorer. He can take those pieces and he can restore you to a place of blessing. We see God as a restorer throughout the Bible. Job, who lost everything in one day, found himself lying in the dust, scraping the boils on his body with broken pieces of pottery. God restored him and blessed him beyond what he had even in the beginning. In 1 Samuel 30, David and his men returned from battle to find their homes burned and their wives and their children taken captive. Then David's men talked about rebelling against David and turning on him and stoning him. David encouraged himself in the Lord, and God told him to pursue and overcome and restore it all, and recover it all. And David's wife and children were restored to him. Then there's Peter, who failed Jesus miserably by denying that he even knew him. But Jesus restored him and gave him a place of prominence and authority in the early church. If everything is falling apart, remember God can take what is left and restore you. Nothing is too hard for God. Secondly, when everything is falling apart, remember that God remains. When a sheep was destroyed by a predator, the shepherd was still there to pick up the remains, to pick up the pieces. The flock would move on, but the shepherd would remain. We have a shepherd that will never leave us or forsake us. That means that he will never turn his back on us. Though our life may be shattered into pieces, God still remains. Everyone else may leave us and move on, but the shepherd of our soul will always be by our side. God never gives up on us. We might give up on our friends, or we might give up. Our friends might give up. Our family might give up, but God never gives up. When we are struggling in these times, we can't rely on our feelings. They are too unreliable. Our feelings and our emotions are unreliable. We cannot depend on them. And this is why we are commanded to live by faith and not by sight. In 2 Corinthians 5:7, we can't always depend on the things that we see. We can't always depend on the things that we feel. We have to know that by faith, God is still in control and that God is going to restore us. And as we wrap up our talk tonight, I want you to remember that if everything is falling apart in your life, all is not lost. There is hope for you. God restores and God remains. God isn't finished with you yet.